Whenever I pop open a new fantasy book, which is less often than I'd like to admit, and I see that the author has created a map for their lovely, fantastical world, I am always delighted. To me, that is that extra high effort step taken to make one's world more immersive. It gives your mind something more tangible to fall onto and a visible tracker of the character's journey. Maps are just very cool. They're these beautiful depictions of our world through a varied number of viewpoints, whether it's about the topics that they cover, the stories that they tell, whatever it represented to that specific point in history. What is this map trying to push? Whether it's sea charts or propaganda propping up this specific area. What does that have to do with a map of Elantris? Not much, but maps are cool and worth a tangent. Back to the fake real maps. They're just this great example of really showing how much you care about your world building, and giving it that extra touch. Now, geographically, admittedly, sometimes it can be a little tenuous. Take A Song of Ice and Fire's very rectangular world, but they're not geography majors. It can be forgiven in the face of it's just a very, very cool thing for someone to do. Got a few books that contain said maps, not as many as I would hope to have, but I just got back into reading like a few years ago, so I'm trying. Guy Gavriel Kay's Under Heaven is a historical fantasy that takes place in Tang Dynasty China. Very poetic book, very dense book. It's a great read overall. I really enjoyed it, and the map is very fitting for it. The book really is essentially just a singular journey that takes place over the course of it, and the map just helps to keep a simple track of it. The aforementioned Ice and Fire, I'm currently on Clash of Kings for my reread, and I can say whatever about the tectonic plate fits of Gurm's world, but I cannot say that the man is not dedicated to his detail and to his world building. He is consistent with the logic within, to a fault sometimes. I think sometimes a little too much attention is given to the travel times of every single character and worrying about whether they can go from here to here in the proper amount of time, when I feel like a lot of readers, now more than ever, would be fairly forgiving of certain jumps in distance. Not Littlefinger with a jetpack distance, obviously, but there's a certain degree that it's pretty acceptable. Mistborn, Hero of Ages specifically, which trades out the map of Luthadel for maps of Urdo and Fadrex, and a city map is a great choice for Mistborn. The wider world doesn't necessarily get as much in-depth focus, so make sure to focus on the cities that they take place in, and we spend a lot of time swinging through them, from building to building, sitting on top of said buildings, really pondering life. Some wonderful conversations happen on them, so let the map reflect that. There's also a general map of the Final Empire region, which I just think would look lovely on a foil design. The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which I have not read yet, so instead I'm just going to look at the map and try to make some assumptions from there. Titled The Four Corners of Civilization, which I just think is very cool. The Commonwealth, and presumably most of the western portion, is populated by humans. Eld is just in a forest, so that's the elves. The Ademra beyond the Stonewall Mountains, dwarves. If I had to go with the evil locales, I'd be going with either the Aturan Empire because of the word empire, or Modeg because that sounds like the name of a villain. It's a great map. It's fun that I can do that. I also like the little hermit dude in the corner. And finally, The Child Thief by Brom, which is a dark retelling of Peter Pan. It's a great read. Sadly, the map doesn't live up to that. It's not very appealing visually. There's not really anything to differentiate landmarks beyond very simple labels. It's just not detailed enough to really add anything to the world building, unfortunately. This video was largely directed on vibes, which I thoroughly enjoyed because I thoroughly enjoy finding maps in books. In really anything, whenever a game would release and it had a big physical map in it, that is an honest-to-God treasure to me, and I wish more games did that. I flipped the cover on my copy of Legends Arceus because the inside cover is reminiscent of a pictorial map, which I absolutely adore. Anyway, maps, very cool. You should stare at one for a few hours.